the neuroscientists talk about, well, if you put somebody in a scanner, and you just tell them in an fMRI scanner, and you tell them, any neuroscientists here? So, oh, good, I can get away with saying things that probably are all wrong. But let's say you put people in an fMRI scanner, and you say to them, don't do anything, just lie there. And you move them into the scanner. And what turns out is that there's a region in the sort of medial frontal cortex here that just goes insane. I mean, it uses up tons of ATP, lots and lots of energy. People are told, don't do anything, just lie here in the scanner. And they start to show tremendous activity in what's called the default mode network, okay, this region of the body. And when you interrogate or investigate what is this all about, well, what it's about is mind wandering. It's like you put someone in a scanner and you say, don't do anything, they go into thinking. And what do they go into thinking about? Their favorite subject. And guess what their favorite subject is? Moi. Me. Well, I mean, who could be more interesting than me? It could be a tragedy, the story of how horrible my life is. It could be like a comedy. It could be, but it's all about me. We saw that this morning, did we not? Drill down deep enough. It's not about Kate or it's not about the teacher. Moi. The center of the universe. The interesting thing about this universe is everybody's the center of the universe, so we have to befriend each other. We have to sort of work out new rules for how we're going to negotiate this because, hey, wait a minute, I thought I'm the center of the universe. If I act like I'm the only center of the universe, I could wind up, in some very, very unusual domains. And we can read about them in the newspaper every day. We've got like classical, examples of it. So you put someone in a scanner. Be interesting to put him in a scanner. Put someone in a scanner and you say, don't do anything. And they start to do this kind of thing, okay? Now, if you train them in 8 weeks of MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, so it's only 8 weeks, okay, of training, and then you look at this default mode network, it turns out, and this is work out of the University of Toronto and other places with Zindel Siegel's group, and Norm Farb is the first author on these papers. It turns out that when you put people in the scanner, before they do MBSR, this light goes crazy. And so it lights up and nothing else much lights up. And it's all about me and about the ways in which my mind, I'm lost in thought, and the thought is almost all about me. And then you train them in 8 weeks of MBSR, and they learning how to drop into being and notice, recognize thoughts as thoughts, recognize how attached or seduced we get to them, with that, but then coming back in some way so that we don't take them quite as seriously or reify them quite as much as we did before. 8 weeks later, put them in the scanner, and what happens is that this default mode network attenuates. And what arises is more activity in the lateral network, which they call the experiential network. Now this default mode network, it's all about narrative. It's all about a sequence of events in time. The story of me. Here, it's just this moment, this breath. And a whole universe of experience not linked to narrative. And then these become uncoupled. Now, you do need the story of me. I mean, when you go to the bank, for instance, and they ask, who are you? And you say, oh, I've been practicing meditation for quite some time, so I'm not going to get caught by that question. And you say, I don't know. And then you want to cash a big check. Probably not going to be too sort of auspicious an occasion. There's a funny Sufi story about that where wild, crazy man, Nasruddin, goes in to cash a big check in the bank. And they say, in his classical robes and so forth, in Baghdad, can you identify yourself? So he pulls out a hand mirror, looks at it and says, yep, that's me all right. So these are like deep questions, like who am I? What am I? And the thing is, so the narrative can be uncoupled from the attending, the experiential, non-narrative, present moment network. And then you've got, what do you have? You've got some approximation of a higher intelligence. Because you need this, or you'll but if you don't, in some sense, hold it in balance with the present moment unfolding, then you're basically imprisoned in your narrative. And we've seen the consequences of it this morning. And even if we didn't see the consequences of it this morning, all you need to do is sit down with your own mind for 5 minutes. And you'll see how many of you notice that, whether you've been sitting for 60 years or for 60 minutes, you sit down. And you drop in. How long before the mind secretes some thought and you're off someplace else? How long? Not long. Not long. But there's nothing wrong with that. That's the nature of the mind. It's like saying, well, if you go out to the Pacific Ocean or even to the bay, does it wave depending on the surface, wave depending on the atmospheric conditions? Yes, it does. Yes, it does. And it's the same with the mind. Thoughts are going to do what thoughts do. And sometimes they'll be much calmer, and sometimes they won't, again, depending on the atmospheric conditions. And this can modulate the atmospheric conditions to a very large degree, but still, water is water, mind is mind, it will do what it does. But if you drop down, because the ocean is not just the surface, or the bay is not just the surface, if you drop down 20 or 30 meters below the surface, that's our default mode. That's where we are. So the idea is, can we shift the default mode from mind wandering and thinking, narratives about me, my future, my past, and everything else, to being, then we're operating out of an entirely different platform. Can you feel what that would be? And then and I don't want to create that as an ideal. Now I have to shift my default mode. There hasn't even been enough evidence to really, we need another 30 or 40 years of neuroscience research to understand the complexity of this. Just think for a moment. Inside your little old cranium, and I'm talking about you, is the most complex arrangement of matter in the known universe. So to wake up depressed is a little off, wouldn't you say? Your eyes work, as a rule. Your ears work. Nose works. Touch works. Pretty much everything works, so you wouldn't be sitting here this afternoon. So where is the dysphoria? Where is the dis-ease coming from? What is the root cause of these things that separate us from our true being, true nature, true humanity? And this is the work of mindfulness. This is the work of awareness. This is the work of Dharma.